everyone. Let's continue with our next fireside chat. And this is one I've been looking forward for one reason, because I actually get some time off because we have a guest host here today. This topic is From Legacy to Leadership, how Liverpool Football Club transformed its supply chain for sustainability. We're joined by Rishi Jain, Director of Impact at Liverpool Football Club, and Susie Tomson, Global Head of Insight and Impact at Think Beyond. And Susie is our guest host for this fireside. So a round of applause for my guests, and the floor is yours.
So thanks very much. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you, Rishi, for joining us. We're going to look at how Liverpool has really transformed the supply chain and used the supply chain to help deliver its sustainability work and sustainability strategy. So Rishi's obviously been spearheading that for a while now, and I'll let him talk a bit more about that. But I just think, to set the kind of scene a little bit, like, you know, we've seen a whole series of climate commitment rollbacks. It's increasingly clear that sustainability kind of isn't an optional extra and actually is a critical part of business. And I think that conversation is changing. And I also think that we're seeing, certainly in the sport world, and I work at Think Beyond and we work with a lot of sports organisations, Liverpool being one of them, that we're seeing that business case for sustainability and that real embedding and making it a critical part of what we're doing in there. Now, you're leading the Premier League, which is great news, and also I like to think you're leading the way in off the pitch as well with the Red Way. And I think, you know, we're here to talk about supply chain and sustainability being way more than just compliance and actually being a core part of your business world. So would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and also tell us about the Red Way and how that's been embedded into Liverpool?
Cool, thank you, Susie. Hi, everyone. My name is Rishi, Director of Impact at Liverpool Football Club, and I have the privilege of leading the Red Way. So the Red Way is our overarching approach to sustainability. As with most ESG programs, 3 pillars: people, planet, communities. People is what we do around diversity and inclusion. Planet is where you will see all of our targets around the environment and our negative impact on the planet and looking to reduce that. And then communities is a bit of a hybrid and really exciting space to operate in. It's the work of LFC Foundation, what we do in our local, national and international communities, and then how we engage with our commercial partners and supply chain. So as I said, I have the privilege of leading that. Obviously, working for a football club comes with challenges, but also great opportunities to really bring sustainability to life and really allows us to really drive forward and lead the way. Yeah.
So the supply chain is obviously a massive part of that. I think for a lot of organisations, it's the hardest part, certainly if you're looking at climate or carbon targets, for example, but also the risk. And so, you know, the likes of Liverpool, you're high profile. So how have you kind of tackled that piece within the Red Way? Where does it sit in your strategy? How do you really make sure that the supply chain is a part of that and you're managing it in that positive way?
Yeah. So with our suppliers, the best way to describe that is to split them across sort of club and then retail. So all in all, we've got about sort of 4,000, which is obviously a lot. And you've got such a diversity within those. So you've got literally community interest bakery in the shadow of Anfield, which is obviously a key stakeholder for us. We want to support them as much as we can. And you've got huge sort of multinational organisations who you spend probably tens of millions of pounds with. So the relationships are different, and you can't go in heavy-handed to your little bakery across the road and be like, right, you need to do your carbon report, you need to do this, because it just won't work. But at the same time, you can't necessarily go into your big multinationals and say exactly the same, because they'd be like, oh, well, go and work with someone else then. So for us, supply chain plays an integral part. It's a KPI of the Red Way. It's a target that we report on. But it is working well for us at very much begin that journey. Retail side, it's probably where we've seen most of our progress. That's where we're really excited to sort of operate within. As it stands, we believe, or we're told, we're the only football club who reports transparently on its merch footprint. So that's pretty cool. So we have to say that. But we've got a really strong QA team who literally will work with all our factories and all our suppliers across the world to make sure that from the very first stage of them making X product for us all the way through to it landing one of our distribution centres, that it will follow our sustainable procurement code. So we've done a lot of work around that. Jumping back to the club suppliers, we've engaged with that sort of top 25%. That's where we're at on that journey. That's been really positive, but recognise there's a lot more for us to do.
And the procurement code, you mentioned that, like, how's that structured? And I know that you work to a management system approach. There's a very structured framework. You're very intentional about how you've embedded sustainability into the operations and just how you operate as a business. How's that code then been embedded into those day-to-day kind of decision making?
Yeah, so with most suppliers, obviously, and everyone will experience this throughout different stages in our relationship with them. So we found that with some, launching the code, what we've done, we've made everyone aware of it, first and foremost. That's actually really helped us, because some of them have gone, oh, actually, great, and they've onboarded it straight away. Some of them have gone, okay, we're not quite ready, and that's also fine, because that's, I suppose, where everyone in this room is at in different parts of their journey. But ultimately, the code, we said to them, this is the way to operate with the football club. And that's a hard conversation to have at times, but actually we found it be quite straightforward. So we're pleased with that. Over time, as those relationships renew, further develop and enhance, and whether we're bringing sort of new suppliers in, which we're constantly doing, that's when it allows us to go, this is how we operate from day one. So as you said, I know we'll touch on it, sort of legacy suppliers, that's where maybe it's a little bit trickier, but actually the appetite is there for the majority, which is really positive.
Yeah, and I think that legacy supplier piece is interesting, isn't it? You guys have been around for a long time. Anfield has, been there for a long time. It's a historic stadium. I know you've got new parts of it and new sections of it and things, but actually how have you, I think there's probably two sides of that, aren't there? There's long-standing suppliers, like you said, and some of them are keen to be on the journey and want help and are maybe embracing this. And then others, the other side of that is actually your internal team who've created relationships, and supply chain is, getting the value out of your supply chain is often that relationship, isn't it? That personal relationship that people make, and that's quite hard to change or make your colleagues think differently about, actually, could we look at and could we ask them this and can we, how's that?
So yeah, you're totally right. As soon as you think, so for context, the stadium is 140 years old. So that comes with the challenges, but as you've alluded to, we've redeveloped 2 stands in the past sort of 10 or 12 years now. For anyone who hasn't been, I would recommend Anfield. It's obviously a brilliant place to go and watch some brilliant football. But that presents great opportunities, but also challenges. From a legacy supply perspective, actually, when we've gone out, you hit the nail on the head, it's those relationships that our procurement team have got. That's where we've seen most success. So we've gone out to that sort of top 25% that we work with. It's not actually been you must do this. It's like, this is what we've got. It's really important to us. With the Redway and the meshing that we've got around that, with the fact that people know that we are the leading Premier League club in this space, they almost know it's coming, and they know how seriously we're taking it. Like, the procurement code isn't a tick box for us, it's embedded into all that we do. So therefore, when we're going to them and saying we need to do this, they're like, okay, we understand the bigger picture. So then it allows us to have a different conversation. To be honest with you, I don't have those conversations because I shouldn't need to in my role. It's actually embedded within the procurement team. But we have seen some nice wins. So one supplier, for example, they came back to us and said, you know what, we get it. We're going to cover all of our emissions for all of our engagement with the football club. And that was even before we asked them. I was like, great, this is brilliant. And I was like, you're not going to charge us for it? They're like, oh no, you're good. It's like, even better. But I say it jokingly, but that's actually, that's always in the back of the mind.
Yeah.
We have to take these suppliers on the journey, really set the stall out and go, this is where we're at. Appreciate we're not perfect. I don't think any organisation can really say they're perfect. But this is where we're at, this is where we want to get to. We need your help. But we don't want to say from tomorrow, you need to do X, Y, Z, because then they'll either walk away or they'll go, oh, we can do that, but then I've ticked all my Redway targets, but my CFO isn't very happy with me because our invoices have gone up by 10, 20, 30%. Yeah. And that's not the solution either. But we're quite confident that we'll get there.
And I think that's pretty critical, though, isn't it? Because everybody's supply chain, like if the sort of philosophy is that if everyone took care of their scope 1 and 2 emissions, for example, if we're just looking at carbon, like when you start getting down your supply chain, actually your scope 3 are someone else's scope 1 and 2. So that is where we want to get to eventually. And actually, if someone's making money on a contract or something, then why wouldn't they be taking that initiative themselves and taking that responsibility fundamentally, isn't it? Themselves. So I think that's probably quite an important part of the process. What can we learn from that legacy piece and taking those suppliers on that journey? What can we, do you think it's like in essence that it's been pushing at an open door?
Yes and no. That example that I gave earlier, To be honest, the probably regret is that we didn't have that conversation earlier, but that's part of the journey that everyone is on. With others, it's been challenging.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've had to dig our heels in and say, actually, this is really important to us.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of examples I can think of, like in our retail team, particularly in our licensing team, that's where we've had challenges, but actually we've got to a conclusion where we've gone, okay, either by X points, we need you to do ABC, or it's a conversation we need to have about the relationship. And that's not really how you want to do business generally.
Yeah.
But we've never actually had to come to that point where we said, we can no longer work with this organisation because they've understood. And interestingly, like, people as a football club expect your buying power to be huge, and it's not. Really, obviously, you're a football club, global name, global brand, but really, we're probably a medium-sized business. Just have a lot of sort of presence on a global scale. So you can't really lean on buying power, but what you can lean on is the storytelling.
Yeah.
And they go, well, Liverpool Football Club, actually, that's a really strong message to go into and say, why wouldn't you want to work with us on a topic which actually is doing the right thing?
But the challenge there, I've got two questions actually, but the challenge on that bit as a supplier to a football club, like, your value is the brand, isn't it? So a lot of suppliers who aren't your commercial partners, for example, then can't necessarily go out and promote that they're, you know, working for that. So that's a potentially challenge, but we'll get onto that bit in a minute. I just want to touch on, like, value. So you said that a lot of the suppliers are aware of what you're trying to do across the Redway. And in terms of value, and, you know, I think I know the answer, like, it's very driven still, isn't it, by actually how much is it going to cost? But are we moving to the place, like, actually value is quality, and quality now embeds the impact that has on the world, the planet, the people? You know, you were talking about merchandise, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about what you've done in merchandise and how you're making sure that the people who are making your products actually are well looked after. You know the provenance of all your materials and things, and actually that's part of value now. It's not just, it's the lowest.
It is, and to be honest, you could look at the price point and go, that's the cheapest, so we'll go for there. But actually, to your point around value, and you think about things about modern slavery and workers' rights and general operations, that's more damaging to us. So you might go, okay, that's cheap, great, it's helped us out, or it's cheaper, I should say. But then a year down the line, it comes out that actually there's this huge issue around workers' rights or treatment, then the damage is done. Like, you've already lost that, so you might have saved a bit of money, but actually your reputation is challenged. And then also there might well be some financial impact on the back of that as well. So for us, particularly in the merch, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, that's where our QA team really go out and literally spend time with these factories. So they'll travel, they'll go to it, and they'll see the journey from, to literally walk into the place, sometimes unannounced, and be like, can we have a look around? Type of thing, and really see it in action. It's a lot of work for them. Like, I don't envy the work that they have to do, but actually it's one of our real success stories, and we've got some nice numbers now in terms of how sort of we've got suppliers sort of aligned to the way that we do things. I think it's 78% of LFC produced product has got a sustainable element within it now, which is amazing. We're really proud of that. And more to come. And then we've also been able to develop those conversations into actual product itself. So we've got more and more ranges which are really calling out the sustainability of them, and they're being produced in the right way by the right people, which is very strong. The next challenge is, like, how do you continue to do that in a way that's bigger than Liverpool? How do you sort of tell that story from a merch perspective? How do you tell that and go, this is a great way to do it? Might not be the perfect way for everyone, but this is a great way to do it, and how can other suppliers do that too?
Yeah. And in that, like, how do you take that to the next step and sort of scale that impact, isn't it? It's like you are putting some of that messaging on the products and things, like on the bags or the packaging, and talking about that and having different packaging. That's quite hard to measure the impact of, isn't it? And are you heading in that direction? Is that...
Yeah, we'll get there. It is hard because what we don't have yet is data on... We do ask, obviously, people reasons for purchasing, but not all the time. We don't have data in terms of why X person has chosen a specific product. I'm talking very much about the LFC product, not necessarily like the Nike sort of playing jerseys and training gear that you see, because obviously our own product we have much more control over. We haven't done that yet. We probably should do, to be really honest. It would be a nice sort of development for us. But I think people are definitely coming into our stores, particularly now, and seeing the fact that we remove, like, single-use plastics from items that even, like, really, what seems really basic but really important, like Christmas wrapping paper. doesn't come wrapped in that really sort of flimsy cellophane stuff now. It's just got a little paper sticker next to it. But what's also quite nice is the team have gone, let's give people a couple of centimetres of extra paper, just in case it does rip and damages it. They're not coming back to us and saying, so I'm like, that's really nice that they've just gone ahead and done that. On our retail channels actually this week, is they've sort of, off their own back again, which is brilliant, they've sort of dubbed this as like Sustainability Week for product. So all this week on our LFC Retail Instagram is Redway messaging sustainable products, and they've just had to go, it's really important for us to push this. So there's some really nice products out there, and then we are seeing people literally clicking and buying as well. So we'll have some data hopefully by the end of the week where you can see more about sort of consumer and supporter trends too.
Yeah. And then moving from like supply chain for the people, you know, who the products and services that are helping you run either your merchandise arm or actually as a club as well, your commercial partners, that's obviously critical, isn't it? But that's still part of your kind of value chain, that's part of the organisations that you work with. How do you mirror what we've talked about in the supply chain? How do you take that into those commercial partnerships?
To be honest, the commercial partnerships piece is probably where we as a club really excel. So we've got sort of 25, 26 commercial partners, I think 8, maybe 9 of which are based in the US. And interestingly, for those who operate in the US model is quite different. You tend to have a commercial partner who sort of almost owns a strand of sustainability. So you might get, for example, like a waste management provider, and they come in and deliver that service for you. We haven't really gone for that model. We haven't gone for that model because we feel what's really integral and important for the football club is to own sustainability and really take responsibility for it. And obviously we have partners who come in and support us and provide solutions to some of our challenges. That's a no-brainer really. But what we really find that like make sure we toe the line on is if that partner decides to step away or the relationship ends for whatever reason, at the end of the contract, that it's not seen that work stream goes with them and we just stop operating. But the partnership space is really exciting. We've seen loads of value added to what we do. So you think of some examples across our principal partners. So Standard Chartered, they're out front shirt. They've got a sustainability team of like 150, 160 people. They're a huge multinational organisation. We actually tap into their expertise a lot. So we work with them closely and actually get to stress test and check the work that we're doing. So it just adds another layer of what we do. What's really interesting is obviously they're a bank. So like their regulations and compliance level is like here. We're not quite there yet, but actually it's great to know sort of where we'll get to. Then you've got other examples like AXA are really passionate around mental health and well-being, and we're doing some more work with them on the planet side of things. Expedia, they're a travel partner. That's really nice, actually. They're really focused on the women's game.
Yeah.
And they're really passionate on the women's game and getting fans to games. So they put on free coach travel for supporters to get to and from women's home games and women's away games. But what they never really connected the dots with, and that's what we did as a team, was actually there's an emission saving that comes with that. So working with the Think Beyond team, we actually crunched the numbers and said, yes, you're bringing communities together and opening access to women's sport, but you're also crunching the numbers in terms of telling the story about emissions and savings and carpooling, etc.
Yeah.
So it's really strong, and actually something that we're really proud of. Like there's more to come in the partner space. Ultimately, we have a target which we published as 100% of our partners aligning with the Redway. Some of them will be on the planet pillar, some of them will be on supply chain, some will be around diversity, inclusion, communities, but that's the beauty of it. And for us, when we engage in those relationships, when a new partner's onboarded, I'm probably having 3-4 meetings with them before like we've even got to announcements, so we can actually hit the ground running. And then we let announcement get out of the way, all the excitement, and we go, right, let's get to work. So it's really exciting, actually, the space that we're in, something that we're really proud of.
Yeah, and that's quite unusual for a sports team, isn't it, to have like the sustainability. I mean, I know we're moving into a different kind of world at the moment, but it has very much been like over there, sitting over there, don't talk to the commercial team, and actually making that a core part of the business and the business strategy, and making sure that you've got the right partners in the same way that you've got the right suppliers who are going to deliver value to you. You're now starting to look at the right partners who are also going to align and not have that reputational risk or damage.
Yeah, we've had partners who've come to us and we've got to a stage where senior leaders, thankfully above my pay grade, have gone, you know what, this isn't right for us. The damage it may do, is it worth it? Is it really worth that? And it makes you quite proud to be able to say that. But also we know the reality is like football, sports, all these businesses, our ultimate goal is to win trophies on off the pitch. That's what we talk about all the time. And we know partners can really help us in that journey. So it's great, as I said before, it's exciting space, we can also learn from them as well. Like some of these partners, particularly a lot of them actually, are more advanced than we are. So we actually tap into them and say, can you help us on our journey? And then they'll go, yeah, but can you help us on the storytelling piece? And that's one thing that we can do really well, because it's football, it's emotive. And if you don't support Liverpool, you probably support another team, or you have another sport that you follow for the majority of the world. So it gives us opportunities to do great work together. Yeah.
And I think, that's the beauty of the sport piece, isn't it? That the fact that you've got that storytelling platform. So what would you, it's fantastic. I mean, obviously, very proud of the work you've done, and it's, it's a great story, and it's a great example of what can be done and how you can engage both suppliers. And then, for those organisations that are in the space of maybe you have partnerships and you're creating collaborative partnerships, and I think that's the reality. Whether it's a social impact or an environmental impact, collaboration is the way that we're going to, succeed in the future. What kind of advice would you give to people who are starting out this journey, or looking or thinking like, supply chain, I've probably not got 4,000 suppliers, but maybe, a number of, we've been in existence for a long time, we've got existing established, relationships. I don't know how to start the conversation. What sort of advice would you give to people in that space?
For us, and obviously recognise, acknowledge that every organisation is different. I'd say for us, it was very much about understanding why we would engage with suppliers and understanding why that was important. So I think if you go in and go, we'd like to do something, okay, what? And then he's struggling for there. So for us, actually, it's about building the plan and saying, this is years 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 5 upwards, and this is what that journey looks like, and really laying it out to them. That's where we see most success. So when we have those examples of where a supplier's come to us and said, actually, we're going to look after our own emissions because you've asked us, that's great, but we never really, probably would never have had that had we not gone to them with a plan and a proposition like, this is the journey we want to take you on. But that takes time. And also, I think importantly, it's, as an organisation, really establishing why it's important to you to sort of do work on sustainability. But all in all, as I said, every organisation is different, so hopefully it's just about getting started.
Yeah. You're loitering.
We are right out of time. We do have time for a very, very quick question from the audience, if we're still able to throw to that. Do we have any? We have one on, we've got two. We'll go to those quickly. If they could be short and sharp, I'd be very, very grateful. If you just keep your hands up, one there and one there. Thank you.
Hello, Leonard Barkley, Normac Verifavia. I was just wondering if Liverpool has any plans to have the team travel more by train or by coach within the country instead of by plane for its away games.
I love a team travel question. I literally get them on every panel that we do. So I'll be honest with you, there's probably there is a misconception about how the team travels. Obviously for European competition, we travel by plane. We actually do a lot of coach travel and a lot of train travel. As much as we can. We actually got numbers now where we can say it's like, I think it's less than 0.5% of our travel is for domestic use. So for us, it's actually about telling that story and sort of myth busting a little bit. We've got a really well thought out travel policy, which doesn't necessarily take into account the door-to-door journey, like how long will it take us to get, for example, the training ground to X stadium. It takes into account next game, what time kickoff is, how many injuries you've got, performance data. So it's a really sort of solid approach, and last year we were able to say that every single travel decision that we made was within that policy. So I feel we're doing a really good job. Obviously there's always going to be an element of things that we can do better, but all in all I think probably football, media perhaps have maybe got a little bit of myth busting to do around travel, because it's not quite as bleak as people think it is.
And adding to that, though, you actually transform the fuel that you use in your coach as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've made the supply, the supplier who provides you with your coach and manages that and maintains that, actually then installed the tank with sustainable HVO fuels and things. So it's all run on that. So it's been well thought out, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Jez Lowe, Sky Energy, and long-time Liverpool supporter since Michael Owen's glory days in the 90s. We talked a lot about sustainability, and a good question there about travel, and would be interested to speak more about that point. But interested to hear also, in a time when, especially things with going on in America, people are rolling back on DEI commitments and strategies and things. Be really interesting to understand Liverpool as an example of sort of what the business case is for DEI and how you tackle that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So firstly, So you'll know this as a Liverpool fan, we've got American ownership. And what's really encouraging is that Liverpool's a football club, FSG is a group. There's been no rolling back of D&I at all, which is positive. Like, to be honest, it was almost a non-conversation because we were like, we're obviously not going to roll back on it. For us, D&I forms a very key part of the Red Way. So when we talk about the 3 pillars, people, planet, communities, people is diversity and inclusion, it is a key priority for us. Obviously, the purpose of this panel is sort of more environmental sustainability, but it is very much at the top of our decision-making processes. So when we do work with, for example, commercial partners, a lot of them actually come in and say, well, not a lot of them, some of them come in and go, we're really passionate around gender diversity, working with sort of ethnically diverse groups, so we'll elevate that messaging with them first, and then we'll go, okay, let's start on working on the planet. So all in all, like, we're a football club that very much leads the way in diversity and inclusion. As with everything, we know we can do a bit more, but we've really led the way for a number of years now, something we are very proud of.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for those questions. Coming up in just a second, we have our next keynote with NHS Supply Chain with Heidi Barnard. But for now, Rishi, I owe you an apology. I tried to get the colours changed behind you. I apologise. I tried to get it done at short notice. It wasn't possible, so I apologise for the pictures. Next time, absolutely. And if you see Harvey Elliott about the place over the next few days, if you can give a man hug from me for that goal in Paris last night, say it's from me. It'll scare the hell out of him. He won't have a clue, but I'll be very grateful. But for now, my thanks to Susie and to Rishi.